It's 111. Look at that.
It is.
I'm all about spirit numbers and angel numbers. I love that. All right. So, hi, everybody. What is up? Welcome to another episode of Getting Mental with your host, Brenda Sarai Zuniga. And we have an incredible host. I mean, yes, we do have an incredible host, but we have an incredible guest today with us, Josh Donaldson, who is a mastermind and creative genius behind When the Music Stops, which is a nonprofit. And I'm gonna read everything that you guys do because I don't want to butcher anything up when it comes to describing how incredible When the Music Stops is. And When the Music Stops is a nonprofit community with the mission of supporting emotional health, mental health, and suicide prevention through music, connection, and love. When the Music Stops provides live and virtual workshops via unique methods of therapy, including meditation and journaling, sound baths, prevention discussions, wellness circles, and more, and all completely free to the public. This is absolutely incredible, and I'm so honored to have Josh here with us for him to share his story, share his knowledge, empower us, and so that we can learn about also more about this amazing person in front of us. Thank you, Josh, for being here.
I'm honored. Thank you for asking me to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So tell me, tell us a little bit about your story and where you come from.
Yeah, sure. I also want to touch base on some of where my thoughts are with When the Music Stops lately is I've been working with my therapist on getting back to basics. So a lot of things have changed in the last year, in the last 8 months, in the last 6 months, and in the last 90 days. So obviously we're trying to be fluid with everything that we do and trying to learn, adapt, evolve, And so right now, some of the things that are coming up for me are, what are the basics of When the Music Stops? Well, for me, the end all be all is suicide prevention, but how do we get there? So, for me, the three basics are music. At When the Music Stops, music comes first because that's what connects us, our love for the music that binds us together and creates community. Mental health. And mental health is more important than ever to talk about. When the Music Stops, we provide simple, common sense ways to work on, improve, and maintain your mental health. And then suicide prevention. Everything we do is rooted in suicide prevention because we're here to save lives and create lasting bonds. So I really wanted to lean into those things because those are the things that I've been focused on as of recent. A little bit about me. So there's so many different versions of my story, but essentially I got into music touring. I was a tour manager for DJs in the late 90s.
Oh, how awesome.
Yeah. I grew up in Seattle. I mean, I'm gonna age myself here, so all the Gen Zers are changing the channel right now. But so I grew up in Seattle during the Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Nirvana era. Right, that's when I was like in high school and things like that. And then I got into the rave scene and I started traveling with one of the biggest DJs in the rave scene at that time, DJ Donald Glad. Straight out of high school, I became his tour manager. We'd done over 20 countries by the time I was 21 together.
Oh my
So
God, it's incredible.
Yeah, and so music was my whole life. I wanted to be a DJ, but I had a business mind. And I found that a great DJ was like a guitar player. They are a little eccentric. They just kind of go off into the music and kind of just they're gone. You don't know where they are.
Yeah.
They're on another planet, just playing for us. Usually, when an artist has that unbelievable, beautiful way to channel this musical gift through them, then something else is usually lacking, or not there. Maybe it's logic, maybe it's business sense, maybe it's, filing their bills and taxes. Who knows, whatever that is. And so what I found was that my role was leaning into understanding brilliant DJs, artists, musicians, and then how can I support them? on their
Oh,
journeys.
it's awesome.
And so how can I help manage that process? Was it booking the flights? Is it carrying the records? Is it booking the hotel rooms? What was it that they weren't good at that I could support them on their journey so that they could focus on channeling the music and being this unbelievable creative that they are? Because it's hard for us to be creative, be incredible, and then also worry about, all the day-to-day logistics of getting to the show and things like that. And
Yep.
so I had a great career doing that, but I have a bit of a musical ear. So I have an ear for talent, and I became what is known as a talent buyer. A
Mhm.
talent buyer is somebody in the United States or anywhere in the world that finds acts, up and coming acts or top acts, whatever they are, and they book them for venues. So there could be concert venues. You could be a talent buyer for comedians.
Mhm.
And you book comedy shows, you book music festivals. So for every time that somebody sees a band somewhere or an artist or a rapper or a singer or a DJ, there's a talent buyer behind that show that bought that talent, that did the contracting, that did the details, that did the
Oh.
negotiations. So, and it's a very small, there's only 20 of them in the country.
Oh, wow.
There's only like two handfuls. Usually, so like Live Nation would probably have a talent buyer that's regional, one in this area, one in this area, one in this area, but across the country, they wouldn't have too many.
Yeah.
And so I became known as a talent buyer in Las Vegas. I spent 14 years there, 2003 to 2017.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was a buyer, and I bought a lot of shows every year for a lot of the venues there. Big shows, small shows, medium-sized shows. And then
And
in
so you would
2000,
get the talent and then you would book them for these venues, right?
yeah,
That's so
absolutely.
dope.
But the thing is, though, it's like a Rubik's cube. You need to get all the sides to match.
Mhm.
So you want to find the perfect balance of somebody that people want to see,
Mhm.
who's not too expensive, and where there's a margin where you can make money, but the
Oh, yeah.
energy is going to be high. So it's like this, a friend of
Oh, yeah.
mine, calls me the nightclub alchemist,
Love
because
that.
I'm like, just it's like always mixing it up, like, okay, how did we make sure that the energy is incredible and the people are dancing, they're having the best time ever, but the tickets are affordable, but the bar can make money. So it's like all this, it's like I call it the Rubik's cube, he calls it alchemy. It's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And it does take a very special mind to do that because you do have to worry about the logistics and the talent and the pricing and the audience and what day is it? What's going on around, the
Yeah,
venue that day? It's like
competition,
there's
ticketing, yeah.
so many factors that go into this. So many. I think that's amazing that your mind can do all of that. We need you because
Yeah,
oh my God, like look, yes. I'm a businesswoman, but I'm also a creative. And Bo Burnham has a song called Left Brain, Right Brain, and that they're always at war with each other. But when he does comedy, he's able to blend both because doing
wow,
comedy allows, and it's true, I've never felt so heard and understood in my life. When we perform comedy, I'm able to analyze and man the form, but with being a creative, I'm able to express it, so it's like using both, which is what I love doing. But oh, man, if I could have someone just take over all the admin and business side and I can just flourish in the creative part.
yeah.
Oh,
So that's almost anybody's dream.
oh,
I
I
mean,
know.
it's funny that you say that. I'd like to tell a quick story. A
Yeah, of
year a
course.
year ago, I was moving after spending 2 years in isolation in Florida, no friends, no family, really focusing on my mental health, volunteering, being, we can get into all of that. But I moved back to San Francisco, back to the Bay Area, and I had a friend of mine that believed in me, and she said, instead of giving you money or donations, what I'm going to do is give you a place to live. I'm going to let you move into my house for almost a year, and you'll have meals, you'll have the bills
Mhm.
paid, you don't have to worry about that. Focus on when the music stops. And something beautiful happened within 90 days. I went from worrying and being depressed to, like you said, flourishing, being creative, seeing branding, seeing where I need to be, how I can do it, where we need to be, where can we use our voice, what needs to be done. And all of a sudden I had these beautiful downloads that were coming to me. I need to book this theater over here on this night, and I need to book this mental health speaker and bring them in with this poet and this rapper and this singer. And it was like, the alchemy portion of it.
Hell yeah.
And the aha moment for me was, how was I able to get from depression? I mean, aside from my 2 years of mental therapy and all the things I worked on, but in the moment, how was I able to get from depression to creative bliss, if you will? And I looked back and I reflected on it, and it was because my basic needs were met, and I no
Yes.
longer had to worry about them. I didn't have to worry about food or shelter or electricity or power or where I'm going to sleep. And as soon as that worry is gone, then that other part of the brain activates. And
Right.
so all in that moment, I was able to realize that it wasn't about me. What about all the people in the world, especially in, let's focus on America right now,
Yeah.
but everywhere, that are struggling with their student loans, their car payments, maybe they're working at Starbucks, maybe they're waitressing, maybe they're busing, maybe, they're working the construction, maybe they're working the jobs that make this country move, and they aren't able to stop worrying about their rent or their bills or inflation or their food or their kids or student loans or what they're going to do. And so they never are able to get to that creative bliss point. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I've been thinking about lately is how can we help people? I don't know what it is, but how do we help people get to that creative bliss? How can we help people relieve that pressure? Because think about this, we might have the next Albert Einstein or the next Mozart, or the next, whomever it may be at Walmart, who's working right there. And somebody might come in and judge them because of their position, but they
Right.
might be the most brilliant minded, beautiful person in the world, but they're worried about their bills. And so they're not able to get to that point where they're able to hit that flow state of creativity.
Yes. And you touched upon exactly what Maslow talks about. Have you heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Of course.
Yeah. So it's about having that, our first needs, our basic needs of survival met, right? And then
Yeah.
we can like food, shelter, and then move on over to the next of the pyramid. And to the top is fulfillment of like creativeness that we're able to be able to partake in. And you're absolutely right. When people live in a survival mode, right? When our brain deems us in survival mode, it is very hard for us to be creative. It is very hard for us to have any sort of attention on anything else other than I need to survive and I need to get my basic needs met.
Even self-care. So let's say that you're struggling with your mental health, and you're looking on Instagram, you're going on your page, you're going on my page, you're on When the Music Stops, you're on your page, you're getting this advice, and we're telling these beautiful things. You're doing one of your videos where you're singing and writing songs, you're going to one of my things that says, hey, meditate and be in nature. But you're like, wait a second, I meditate, I can't even pay my rent that's due next week, or my car just broke down, or I'm out of gas, so it's really easy for us to tell people what to do, but
Yes.
it's not always easy for us included or them in the moment when we're struggling and worrying to be able to find that peace and that calm, to go to a park and take our shoes off. Well, it feels like you're doing something wrong if you don't know where the money's coming or the food is coming or the bills or the power just got turned off. Going to the
Yeah.
park feels like a luxury, even though it's not.
Right. Right. And you bring up a really, really, really great point where we need to self-care is not a luxury. It is a necessity that
Yeah,
needs to be part of our basic needs.
absolutely.
It's not like, okay, once I get my basic needs met, then I could self-care. No, 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 no. This needs to be part of the first starting part of the triangle. Because if we're constantly in survival mode, we're not going to be able to focus on anything else that's around us. And we're going to constantly be worrying about the next thing and the next thing. Whereas right now, let's say somebody does have a roof over their head and they have eaten today. Let's sit on that for a little bit and let's practice some gratitude. Let's practice that meditation. And here's the thing with meditation, it's science. It's all neuroscience. It's not woo woo. It's not like, oh, what? I'm just going to sit
New
here and
age
breathe.
pseudoscience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and breathe and everything will get better. What I'm saying is that this is going to help our brain develop gray matter and
Yeah.
develop a stronger tie to the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for focus, attention, memory, mood regulation. And breath work is going to help calm our central nervous system so that even though we may not be in ultra survival mode, because we have an overactive amygdala and we're not practicing self care, we will perceive things as if they are a threat, or we will worry unnecessarily over things that we could
Absolutely.
practice some calm into it.
And we need to be breathing. First of all, it's really important to know that, and it's a hard thing to practice and do, even though I know it, I don't always am able to do it, but we need to be breathing through our nose. Our mouth is meant to be eating, and we're not supposed to be mouth breathers, and we are. And that's one of the biggest misunderstandings. We need to be breathing through our nose to oxygenate our brain, which allows us to calm those down, which allows more oxygen to flow to certain areas of the brain, like you said, to create new neural pathways and brain matter. And then also through breathing techniques, you calm the vagus nerve or the parasympathetic nerve. Each breathing technique, different hold patterns regulate different parts of the body in different ways. And these are things that you can do for free and at home.
When your friend gave you that awesome opportunity to have shelter and to have all this stuff for a year, what were some of the positive coping skills that you were using during that time that also you would credit to your creativity flourishing?
Wow, excellent point. Walking, I gained a lot of weight, and when I got on an antidepressant, I was in recovery for a year, and so I gained a lot of weight. When I moved to San Francisco, I was struggling physically, and so for me, it was getting outside, getting fresh air, and mobility, being able to walk around the block, and it was hard at first, and which is I had never felt that, and it's a very humbling thing. So being grateful, practicing gratitude, being grateful that I was alive, being grateful that even if I was heavy, I wasn't skinny and dead, I was heavy and alive. So the glass is half full. There's a silver lining to my weight gain. My weight gain was because my body was fighting to stay alive. And this new medication that I was on was helping me regulate my depression and things like that. So my medication was helping me. My therapist is incredible. Gratitude. I try to journal write. I would be lying if I said that I journaled every day. I don't. I do a couple times a month, but it's so powerful and so important. If I got to the point, when I get to the point where I can do it once a week, and there's something about putting pen to paper that manifests what you put in there. Not just it's a energetic release of what you're going through, which is usually what we do when we're journaling. We predominantly put in there everything that's going wrong, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, what we're going through, where we're at, what happened today, who pissed us off, who upset us, who hurt us. We write it in there, and it's a cathartic release. But I've seen lately people are starting to write in their journals what they're grateful for, which is now you're putting that into the universe, and you're letting them know, this is the things that I do care about and I am thankful for and I do love. One of the things that works for a lot of my friends, and I want to get into it, is vision boarding. But also I think that in our journals, it's important for us to write and visualize our goals, and then focus on those things and put our intention into where do we want to be. You can change your life at any point in time. You can change your adventure at any point in time, and it's really important to understand that you can set your intention. It won't happen overnight, but you can set your intention. You don't want to work at Walmart anymore. You don't want to work at Starbucks anymore. What's the next steps to get to where you're at? I don't have a college degree. I don't usually talk about that. I immediately went into music, and that was my calling. And so, not everyone has a higher education. That's okay. It's a big world, and you can make a lot of money if that's what you're looking for, without an education, just by focusing on what it is that is important to you.
I love everything you just said. And this is going to be a clip that I'm going to be releasing because you're incredible. Like everything you said is exactly what I believe. No, you don't need a college degree to feel smart. No. There's a book. Gosh, what book is it? Is it How to Win Friends and Influence People, or is it Think and Grow Rich? I forgot which one of
They're
those.
both in the top 20 mental health self-care bestsellers of all time. Both of those.
I love those books. I read them both multiple times, but I can't remember in which book this is the example of. But there's a really, really big, powerful CEO who is being questioned in court because they're saying that he's dumb and that he doesn't have this degree and he doesn't, he's not capable of doing what he's doing. And so they're asking him all these very trivial questions, like what president did this in 19 whatever. And he was just like, why is everyone asking me this? He didn't know the answer to it. And so the person questioning him was like, see everybody, see, he doesn't know the answers. And it got to the point where the CEO that was being questioned goes, okay, these questions are meaningless to me. I have people that I pay who can answer these questions. I have people for me who can answer them. And then the whole room fell silent, because that's when they knew that the CEO, even though he didn't have this quote quote higher education, was the most educated person and intelligent person in that room, And there's a difference between smart and being intelligent. Anybody can be smart. Anybody. If you give somebody the ability to go to college and you fund their college education and they get that degree, anybody can do that. But it takes true mastery to develop emotional intelligence, which is the true form of intelligence. Learning about how to regulate yourself, how to form relationships with others, how to maintain relationships with others, how to learn collaborating with the people around you, right? And learning empathy, learning how to put yourself in other people's shoes, learning how to lead. That is true intelligence, because anybody, all right, can go to college and get that degree and say, look, I got my 4-year in blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. You went to school, you read some books, you had someone talk to you about it, you regurgitated the information, you took a test, and the test said you passed. Okay, great. But how do you treat people? How do you treat yourself?
Well, that's funny that you say that really quick.
Yeah.
We're completely a little off topic, not that it matters, but so this is I don't even know how this is gonna be perceived, but exactly what you just said is what the founders of Google did to find their last CEO. So their CEO for the longest tenure of the last 20 years was Eric Schmidt. He's no longer the CEO, but I think he retired, but I believe he was the CEO for maybe 17 years. And Sergey Brin and what's his business partner's name? The two gentlemen that own Google, they were looking for a CEO in the early 2000s. I want to say around 2004 or something around those lines. And they had some unbelievable candidates. And one of the things they did was they took Eric Schmidt, who was a candidate, who was this top of the class, higher education, unbelievable candidate who, was perceived to be a brilliant man and a genius. And they took him to Burning Man and they put him in the
That's awesome.
There's articles about this. There's studies about this, articles about it that you can just type it in, it'll come right up. They had him in the crowd, just because they at Burning Man, there's no money. There's no, they strip away societal titles.
Yep.
Everyone is meant to contribute and things like that. And so then they watched him for 8 days to see what his interaction was when he was hanging out with, let's just say somebody from the mailroom. Obviously there's no mail at I don't know. Yeah. But so somebody from the mailroom or somebody from, whoever it is, the janitor, whatever, whoever they took to Burning Man at the Google camp, and they brought him and they wanted to see the interaction, how he interacted with people. And because of how he treated everyone, he got the job and became the CEO. So it wasn't based on his qualifications. That was what got him in the door, but what got him the job was how he treated others, his emotional intelligence, and what happened when they took away his money, took away his title, took away his luxury, and how he functioned in society.
Because that's huge. She was showing that he's a leader, not because of his degree, but because that's who he is as a person. He was able to get along. He was able to not have that pompous attitude of I'm greater than you just because of the title. That's what life's about. We're supposed to be humble always.
Easier said than done.
You know what is, and for those who are like, oh man, that's hard. How? The book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, does an incredible job at talking about the importance of being kind, of being humble, and genuinely caring for people, developing that genuine love for people and empathy, because that's what life is about, but you got to do it in a genuine way because people will know. Energy doesn't lie. People will know when it's fake.
That leads me to another story.
Yeah.
2019 was my burnout after 23, 24 years. And I attempted to take my life. I was on vacation, had a psychotic episode and a nervous breakdown, and I would 3 days 3 days afterwards, I slit my wrist in a very, very, very severe way. But so a lot of people know that information, but I was Baker acted, which is kind of like a 5150 in California. I spent 7.5 days in the hospital. They said my arm and my hand would never work. They do. I had reconstructive surgery. Then I was put into a detox, and then I was went into a 90-day treatment program. After 90 days, they said, okay, you can go home. And my family had packed up my house in San Francisco. And, essentially I gave up. This is only 90 days after my psychotic breakdown. And I've traveled the world many times and I had nothing left. And so I just succeeded in these 90 days of therapy and treatment and all this stuff, but I knew it was nothing. It was not even a penny. It was not even a needle in the haystack. And so I asked if I could stay longer. And, we worked that out. And around the 6-month mark, I was told, okay, now it's time for you to be of service. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, you need to go to other institutions, treatment centers, detoxes, hospitals, and volunteer.
Yeah.
And, I've done public speaking previously. Prior to my breakdown, I've done a lot of what some people would consider prestigious things. And I was very extremely confident, overconfident, and I was a wreck. I was anxious. I was nervous. I didn't know what to do. I had butterflies in my stomach, be of service. What does that mean? And it sounds like the simplest thing. And so they said, well, just go hold space with people that are hurting. So usually when you're in a detox, there's only 2 handfuls of reasons why you're there: an overdose, a suicide attempt, a DUI, you just lost your kids, you've been court ordered, or you've been ordered by your employer. Those are the main reasons why you're there. There's other reasons, you can't function because you're addicted to something, but predominantly those 6, 7 reasons are why you're there.
Yeah.
And so I went in for the first 2 months. This is August 2019. I went in for the first 2 months volunteering at places, and I would walk in and I would say, my name is Josh Donaldson. I'm from Seattle and Las Vegas. I ran casinos. I worked at the Bellagio. I worked at the MGM. I threw a Drake concert. I've traveled the world. I did this. I did that. I did this. I did this. I did this. And I tried to kill myself. Well, guess what? Nobody listened. No one. Because there was no humility in my voice. And I came in teaching others what they needed to hear.
Right.
And at first they thought I was grandiose. They thought that I was pathological. And so every time you go in, you're with a different group of people. So I was telling my story and it wasn't relating with anyone. So a miracle happened around the end of September 2019 was my 40th birthday. Right around my 40th birthday, I gave up. I didn't know what to do. So I just shut my mouth and I listened. And that's when I found suicide prevention. Because suicide prevention, it's great. Hotlines are great. Medication, therapy, I do all those things are great. Being diagnosed with whatever's wrong is it helps as well. But the number one thing for suicide prevention is listening. And not listening where you're going to give advice next, but listening, holding space with someone. And I didn't know what that meant until I was quiet. And I found that by me not talking about myself, magic was happening. People actually felt heard. So then the next thing that happened was right around that same time period, I found that I got humble even more than I was starting to. And I thought, well, maybe this 18-year-old from West Virginia who's coming off of Oxycontin and heroin, maybe he has something to teach me. So for the first time in 40 years, instead of thinking that I was the smartest guy in the room and that I was going to teach him because I know everything about life, maybe he's got something to teach me from West Virginia, or maybe he's got something to teach me about the struggles of Oxycontin that I've never thought about, and as soon as I was able to do that, that's when my life started to change. And finding that real service, being of service, there was no transaction. I wasn't court ordered to be there. I wasn't required to be there. There was no paper that they signed afterwards. It wasn't community service hours. I wasn't paid. It wasn't going towards my degree. There was no transaction. And when there's no transaction and you're doing something, and it wasn't on social media, so it was the start of something that they call being good in private, being good in secret. It's something that's talked about in small circles. And I'm still trying to understand what that looks like in my life. But this beautiful thing happened where maybe 1 out of 8 or 9 people, by allowing them to feel heard, they found that will to live. Sorry. They're, that spark inside of them gets reignited because somebody cares. And it doesn't matter that it was me. It's not about Josh. It was a human that cared for another human with no transaction. And it was 2 strangers. And that is this beautiful thing that happens. And so that was what led me on to this suicide prevention journey. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about enough. The first thing that you can do is listen to others, but do it in a way, and this takes so much practice. Do it in a way where you're not thinking about what you're going to do later on that day, what you're supposed to be doing tomorrow, how much money you owe for rent, or whatever it is. Clear your mind, which is a hard thing to do, and hold space for someone. And then if they ask you what your thoughts are, give it to them. But if they don't ask you, don't say anything. And that's okay. It's okay to hold space and listen to someone and not tell them what your thoughts and opinions are. Do you know how hard that was for me to learn how to not tell somebody what to do with their life? Oh my goodness. That was one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned in my life. And that's when my life started to change. And I learned that I needed to be of service for others and that I needed to lean into holding space. And if people ask me my thoughts and my opinions and my experience, that's okay. But if they don't, it's time for me to listen.
That's absolutely beautiful. I had to take a class of communication back in college because I didn't know, but somebody pointed it out back in the day that I had the tendency to interrupt people. And I know that that's also
I've done that.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't know I was doing that at all.
It's subconscious.
Yeah.
I know people that will interrupt. And sometimes when I get excited, I do that. But I know people that do that constantly and they don't mean it in a disrespectful way. They get excited. It's a subconscious habit that we have to unlearn.
Yep, absolutely. And it's also a symptom of ADHD, which wasn't diagnosed till I was 25. So I remember doing this early on, and a coworker back in the day, I was a graveyard server at Denny's. And
where?
The one next to the Wiltern.
Okay, in LA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There was 18-year-old Brenda, graveyard server, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. My cup.
That's rough work for an 18-year-old.
Dude, yeah.
That's rough work for a 50-year-old. But I'm just saying that's a lot of life, because there's some characters that come in at 2:00 in the morning into a Denny's in LA. That's a lot of reality.
Dude, we'll have another episode on that alone. Like, God.
True stories of an 18-year-old working the graveyard shift at Denny's. That could be your next book.
It's gotta be, because oh my God. I had to grow up real fast, and I've been very independent since I was young. And so I was in college at this time too. After at 6 a.m. I would make a cup of coffee and drive to Santa Monica College, and then go back to my place. I lived with roommates. Oh my God, it was a gnarly time. But that's where a coworker would come up to me and he was like, okay, hey, you're doing it again. I'm like, what? He's like, we were all having a conversation and you just showed up and told your story, but we're all focused on what we were saying. And you were just like, hey guys, da, 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 da. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I did that.
That is, I think it's, I want to say that it's related to situational awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I needed to take a class, and I remember psych of communication. That class changed my life. And that's where I learned what you just said, how listening is so powerful. And you don't need to blurt out everything that you have right now. You could take that moment and go, okay, hold on. Can I say this in like 5 minutes? Okay. Like, and take that moment, because listening is incredibly powerful. When we have the ability to make someone feel heard and seen and understood the way you were describing it, that is what heals,
Absolutely. Well, so it gives, let's say that somebody is at their rock bottom. Let's say that they're suicidal. Let's say that they're numbing themselves with drugs and alcohol. And I'm going to strip this down to something basic. And I'm not saying that this is for every scenario by any means. And I'm not going to be dismissive towards addiction, because I'm an alcoholic in recovery myself. Often in our lives, we don't feel heard by and I love to talk about this. It means so much to me to talk about this. We don't feel heard by our significant others, by our spouses, by our kids, by our families. That's one of the biggest ones, by our coworkers, by our employers, or by our peers. Everyone wants to talk about the newest episode of Stranger Things, or what Lido did on stage last night at the festival, or what song is trending on TikTok. Those are fun, surface level things. And sometimes you might have that girlfriend that'll listen for a second, but does she really listen, or does she just want to get off the phone and tell you what you want to hear so she can move on with her day? And
Right.
so a lot of us go through life feeling unheard, and we just have these surface level conversations, and we're pushing all of our emotions down, 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 down. And you don't have to be an addict to be pushing your emotions down. You could be watching, Netflix. You could be, going out, being social, drinking mimosas, like whatever it is that is surface level, because you don't have the capacity. You're not being honest with yourself because you don't have anyone listening who's making you feel heard. So given the opportunity of someone to sit next to you and just listen, it's a beautiful thing. And again, I'm not making this about me. I'm talking about it in general. And what I've seen with my own eyes is that it can reignite the soul or the spirit, not always, but sometimes it can reignite the soul or the spirit by giving it hope and humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that you go 20 or 30 years without being heard in your life, and you don't know that. It's subconscious, you know what I mean? But you feel something's wrong, there's a hole, something's broken. Does anyone care? Is anyone listening? And then finally you get somewhere. I don't know if maybe it's with me, maybe it's with you, maybe it's, wherever you are. Maybe you end up going to a meditation center, and you hold space with somebody, and they listen to you, and they feel you, and they feel what you're going through. Sometimes there's this beautiful moment where your soul or your spark is like, wait a second, maybe I need to change my environment. Maybe I need to change my people. Maybe there is someone or somebody or a tribe or a community out there that cares about connection and community. And all of those things that we just talked about are suicide prevention. Suicide prevention for me, and I've talked about this many times, at the extreme end of it, it's put the gun down and we're sending in the ambulance. That's the extreme end of it. Suicide prevention is, what if someone helps us feel heard, and then 5 or 10 years down the road, we don't get suicidal?
Yes.
What if we learn meditation and we learn service and we feel heard and we feel listened 10 years before? Because oftentimes, if we never have that beautiful connection with community, or we never feel heard, then someday when you're 39 years old, you've had all this glory and money and travels and trips, you slit your wrist because you don't feel heard anymore. You know what I mean? But maybe if I was 25 years old, I had learned these things, that wouldn't have happened. And that's suicide prevention. So often people tell me, well, I'm not suicidal. I hope that you never will be. But
Yeah.
us talking right now is still suicide prevention.
Oh my God, I love all of that. I'm gonna give myself a big hug. Just like feel that and just take that in because you summed it up perfectly. Perfect.
I've thought a lot about it, and my thoughts have evolved constantly. There's interviews that I did in 2019 and 2020 that don't want to say are irrelevant, but my thoughts have drastically changed, and my emotional intelligence has grown dramatically this year.
Mhm.
I'm just an infant on my journey. Every day that I learn something new, I find out that I know less than I did the day before. It's a
Yeah.
very humbling thing. Like, oh my God, what's that? Oh, rabbit hole. Oh no, I don't know anything. I can't believe it. The Earth's flat. Just kidding. It's not.
And we've touched upon that briefly when I went into like a dinosaur rabbit hole a few weeks ago. And I was like, oh man, dude, like now I'm learning about the Mesozoic era. And I'm just like, yo, what? This earth is like crazy old. Oh my God. I don't know anything. No, but back to what you were saying right now about prevention, that is so key. If we focus on prevention, then we can prevent a lot of the outcomes that we are trying to fix right now.
Yeah.
And one of those ways, one of them is by being a genuine listening ear,
Yeah.
caring and focusing on connection with another human being on a soul level, non-transactional, of being
Yeah.
like, I'm human.
That's what's important. Going and volunteering. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Going and volunteering at, I don't want to be too harsh on this, but going and volunteering at your local homeless shelter and feeding them and putting it on TikTok and the gram, you think it's because you're bringing awareness to the cause. Well, are you, or are you just trying to look good to your followers? So non-transactional also means maybe not telling anyone. You know what I mean? That's something that a few people in my life have told me about after I started this journey. They're like, when the music stops is incredible, but Josh, at the same time as when the music stops, can you also do good in secret and not tell anyone, not tell your family, not tell your friends, not tell social media, not tell a single person, and just keep that between you and whomever's on the receiving end of that? And that is a true test in humility. And I'm not sure if I'm there yet. There's times that I've gotten close, but it's a heavy, powerful thing.
I think there could be a really great balance with both when it comes to going somewhere and volunteering and wanting to genuinely raise awareness
Yeah,
on
of
that.
course.
If you have a
Yeah.
platform, that's very important. But like you said, if somebody's doing it out of ego reasons for like, look what I'm doing, then it's like, really, bruh.
Or you need to be, can you go to another place or another shelter or do something else and I don't want the homeless to be the excuse. It could be, volunteering, any number of places with the whales, you know what I mean? But can you can you can you
I love that.
can you do that and not tell anyone, and so I don't know, it's this is a journey that we're all on, but each of those things make the world a better place. We need that more than ever. I don't want to focus on calling people toxic, but I had to mute quite a few people on social media that I love because they're heavily focused on how bad the world is right now.
Yes.
Pandemics, vaccines, sicknesses, death, and that is true. And I am aware of all of those things. I'm aware of racism. I'm aware of bigotry. I'm aware of all of these things that are in the world. But if we can, aside from being aware, if we consume that every single day, it will lower our vibration. Now, I'm not talking about being ignorant to it, but at the same time, I have to put up my energetic wall and say, okay, what can I do? Well, I can go listen to someone. How can I make the world a little bit of a better place today? And maybe your light, Brenda, and my light, maybe it could be infectious. Maybe we can work to become a prism. So then when our light brightens, it turns into a rainbow. And somebody from a faraway land sees that rainbow and is like, I wonder if there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And instead they find us helping somebody or listening.
Which is way better than a pot of gold. You get 2 pots of gold. You're just like, hey, what's up? That's exactly what we do. And I love that you mentioned that too, because I too have found myself muting people. It's like, okay, look, what we consume affects us in every single way, energetically, like you were mentioning. That's exactly what I believe in too. That's why it's so important to empower ourselves, to practice self-care, to make sure that we take care of ourselves, and then we can take care of others. And yeah,
Prioritize ourselves.
yeah, absolutely.
A friend of mine, actually my roommate, he one of the things that he says, and it's the simplest thing in the world, and I I say it too now, and this is something that we hear and we're just kind of like, yeah, blah blah blah. But when you're on a plane and you open up that booklet, or the flight attendant's talking to you, they say to put your oxygen mask on first before helping anyone else. Because if you go rush to help someone and you don't have an oxygen mask on, you could pass out, be in the way, in the aisleway. People can't get past you. Maybe someone trips over you. So it's a great analogy where if you're not putting your oxygen on first, you could be blocking others from putting their oxygen on.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I never thought of it that way.
There's layers to this.
And that's for another episode too. But I've never thought of it that way. I know that we got to put our oxygen mask first, but I've never heard of the analogy of, hey, you could pass out if you don't put on your mask, and then you could trip someone in the process.
Well, so that's, yeah, and that's the, well, so for me, I would think like, okay, wait a minute, why do I need to put my mask on first? I could hold my breath and help the guy next to me, or the person next to me, or the kid, or whatever that is. You know what I mean? But it's so you're not in the way. So you're not hurting others by not taking care of yourself, which is also like,
yes.
Imagine we have all this sickness inside of us that we're carrying, these wounds. Let's loosely use this analogy. And you're going through and you're having these relationships, work relationships, intimate relationships, friendships, whatever that is, right? But you have all these wounds that are untreated, okay? Trauma, whatever that is, okay? You're, without knowing it, you're bleeding on everyone around you. You're bleeding on others. You're spilling whatever toxic behavior that you've learned, and I don't want to I'm not trying to be harsh on people, but I do like to talk about these things because
me
every day I try to think about it. How am I treating others? Am I spreading disease, or am I spreading solution? Am I trying to be, preventing suicides, or am I treating people to where it's hurting their mental health?
Yeah. Am I being a beacon of light? Am I being the best Brenda I could be? Challenging myself to be the best Brenda I could be in this situation? Or am I choosing to repeat patterns that I know are not going to be conducive to me, or the person in front of me, or people around me? And that's a question that requires a lot of self-awareness, right? I
was just going to say that.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that.
Self-awareness.
You took the word out of my mouth.
We on that frequency. I feel you. I hear you, Josh. Yeah. And speaking of feeling, that's another thing that we need to do. And I even wrote a song about it. I wrote a song about suicide, where part of the lyrics go, we live in a society where they teach us to numb our pain away instead of feel our pain. We can make progress by leaps and bounds when we learn how to sit with our feelings, feel them, and have self-compassion for ourselves, and truly feel and cry and expel all of that built up anger, hostility, sadness, anxiety, any of that. Just sit with it, feel it, express it in creative ways, talk to people about it. This is so powerful.
Imagine I've never done any healing work, any emotional intelligence work, any shadow work, any trauma work, anything whatsoever. Imagine this is 2018 and I'm pre-suicidal and we're on this call for other reasons other than a podcast. You probably wouldn't be interviewing me. So, how have you been partying lately? And what would be step one? Cool. What would be the basics that you would explain to somebody that has no history in all of the things that you and I have history in?
I would ask them, how are they feeling?
That's an unbelievable start. And I think that right there, we could touch on that for 2 seconds. There's a woman by the name of Emily Fletcher who does, she has incredible meditations. I haven't met her personally, but I know a lot of people that study under her. And one of the things that she talks about in her meditation is the first 2 minutes of your meditation, you ask yourself, how am I feeling? And you acknowledge it. How am I feeling right now? I'm laying on the ground, I'm sitting in a chair. And then what am I feeling?
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling kind of anxious. I'm feeling kind of sad. I'm sick to my tummy from some oysters last night, whatever it is. What am I feeling right now, actually? And then you go into the meditation. But for the first 2 minutes, you acknowledge what you're feeling. Maybe your ankle hurts. Maybe your tummy hurts. Maybe you got a creak in your neck. Allow the space to feel those things. So I love that you just said that. And I think that is like the very basic thing that somebody could take from this, and both of you, your and my going back and forth, is at the very first thing you could do before you start listening to others is identify how you're feeling.
Listen to yourself. When you ask yourself the question, how do I feel? How do I feel? So back to this call in 2018, if you were in front of me, I would ask you, how are you feeling? And you, 2018, assuming, let's say you say, I'm good. And it's like, okay, what I would do is
I'm fine.
Right. I'm fine. Cool. You're fine. I would allow about 10 seconds of just looking at each other, establishing that
Which would
intimate
now
bond.
make me feel uncomfortable.
Super uncomfortable.
Because I can't sit with
Super.
myself. In
Yeah,
2018, I
super.
can't sit with myself.
Yeah, I know. It would
Start crawling to my skin.
Yep. And then guess what I would do?
I'd look at Instagram.
And then guess what I would do?
Swiping.
I would then ask you again, how are you feeling now? Can you describe the physical sensations?
And I'd be like, this is weird. This is awkward. I'm crawling in my skin, which would be the right answer.
Yes.
But
exactly.
I would be passive about it. But it would be, what, and you're right. How am I feeling? I'm feeling uncomfortable because I can't sit with my emotions or sit with myself, which is because we've been taught to suppress our feelings and how we feel. We need to unlearn these things. So it could be, 40 years, it could be 18 years, whatever, however old you are, you've been taught to put those things in a box and go forward, get to school, get to class, be on time, pay your bills, pay your taxes. That's what we're programmed to do. When you get off work, go to happy hour, grab a drink, have a drink, go home, watch Stranger Things, go to bed, get up, do it again. None of that allows for us to hold space with ourselves and identify how we're feeling unless we're in therapy. And now you and I assume, both know the beauties of therapy. And what's wild is I talk to so many people that are scared out of their minds for therapy. And now loving it so much, I'm like, what? 2018 Josh wouldn't touch therapy with a 10-foot pole. You know what I mean? So I can understand the scary thing. And I've had people reach out to me. This is the wildest one. I've had people message when the music stops multiple times. How do I tell my mom I want to do therapy without her thinking I'm crazy? And I'm like, whoa, that's the world we live in, where the judgment can come from the family, from the matriarch of the family.
Oh, yeah.
And she might not be calling you crazy, but she's built this home and this container of oppression and judgment to where you can't even go help yourself without feeling that you have to look over your shoulder and, be concerned that your mom's going to treat you different on Christmas.
Yep. Which goes back to, it's very important to find even at least one person that you can feel heard and seen by. Because I don't know if you knew about my story, but I'm the black sheep of my family because I sought out mental health and to improve myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Ever since I was young, when I told my family that I was starting therapy, the first thing they said was, "What? We knew you were crazy, but like," I'm like, "Oh,
Wow.
thanks, guys," But then they would say, "Well, what are you going to learn in therapy? What are you doing? You learn about," what did they say? They said, "You learn about
Feelings.
psychology and life, through life." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I want to talk to people. Why are you going to talk to them about what you grew up with? What do you, and then there's
Oh,
obviously
yeah,
a lot.
yeah, yeah. No. Oh, I love that what you just said, because often there's then, are you gonna what are you gonna tell them about us
Yeah. Everything, absolutely
coming
everything.
out, telling on you?
Everything, but I received a ton of backlash from my family
Wow.
because I began my therapy treatment. And I remember when I started seeing a therapist, I was 19, but prior to 19, I was already talking to a lot of counselors at school because I needed it. I needed an outlet. I needed to talk to somebody about what I was going through at home. And
And what was happening at Denny's?
and what did Denny's, those 2 a.m. club rushes. I blame you for that too. Thank you, Josh, for organizing those bomb ass parties around the block. I would get that 2 a.m. rush. Nah. But it's true. Like you were mentioning, then you have the family that can be oppressive with your own treatment. But what helped me so much keep going, despite the constant backlash. And by the way, when I was learning how to set boundaries early on, and starting to respect myself from my family when I was around 19, because that's when my therapy journey began, my family would then say, "Oh, you're changing. You're different. We wish you can go back to the girl that you once were. Why are you? It's making you worse. Therapy's making you worse." No,
Wow.
it's called I'm developing boundaries. I'm respecting myself,
Yeah.
and you're not
Yeah.
going to treat me like this. And
That,
that's where a lot of people can also cave into the familial pressure, right? Of not stepping outside the family because, oh no, then you'll be ostracized. And it's human nature to need to belong to a community because we're social creatures. And I
yeah.
mean, this goes back to evolution.
Community and connection.
That's it, right? We need that to survive. And truly, we need that to survive. So what helped me so much during this time was cultivating my own circle, my own beautiful little universe of friends that were there for me and that were like, hey, we love you no matter what. That unconditional support that I wasn't receiving with my family, but I was receiving it with my friends. And that made the world of difference. So to anybody listening, if you want to start your therapy journey and your family is not supportive of it, please make sure that you surround yourself with friends who are going to be supportive of it and that you can confide in and you do feel listened to and seen. That is important.
Also, if you are the first in your family to do therapy, you might be healing generational wounds
That's exactly what I'm doing. And
and
that's,
generational trauma. So a lot
yep.
of people don't understand that. And the simplest way to put that is that before you have kids and pass on whatever shame and judgment was learned from your parents, who learned it from their parents, who
Right.
learned it from their parents, society has changed, we've evolved. And so now we're at the point where we get to find ways to heal. And when you heal that, then you teach a new way to your children, and you've now healed generational wounds. And I think that people might hear that term generational wounds and not understand what it means. It's
Mhm.
literally as simple as, your mom judging you for going to therapy and her mom judging her. We never went to therapy for 100 years. Well,
Right.
the world's changed now. We can, and it's okay. But if you go to therapy and it helps you, then when you have a daughter or a child or whatever, you let them know, hey, it's okay. Do you want to be in therapy? Like, we can figure that out. Obviously, that also comes with the conversation of having a good therapist, because I've heard a lot of horror stories out there too, but that's a whole nother episode.
It's true. Focus it. And that's how we prevent so many things, by learning to use the resources that are around us and going into them with an open mind and realizing that, and you bettering yourself and you adopting these new practices that your family may not be open to, but you are taking advantage of these resources around you. You are healing generational trauma, and you are preventing, it could prevent, a breakdown in the future, a nervous breakdown, a suicide attempt, right? But starting this young, which is why I'm very passionate about this especially with our youth. I go to schools. I have my own company where I do motivational speaking, and which I know you're a motivational speaker also. I do mindfulness workshops, and I blend it in with music and comedy, because music and comedy are cousins, and music and comedy are the universal languages that everybody speaks. And it's the best way to learn new information that could potentially be a lot and hard to take in, right? But when we blend it in with music and comedy, you're like, oh, okay, you're like more open to receiving it. And this is why I'm so passionate about bringing this to our kids. Start young, start teaching them that there are resources out there, and that it is normal and it is okay to have these feelings, but we first gotta feel them. We gotta be there for ourselves. I did want to touch upon Outside Lands, though, because I know When the Music Stops was at Outside Lands, and you guys had an incredible and beautiful response to you guys being there. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Outside Lands is kind of like the Coachella of San Francisco. It's a big festival with multiple stages, 180 to 100,000 people a day. It's huge, big. It's a big one. It's funny because a lot of people come from the East Coast for that one and everything. It's not as well known as Coachella, but it's been around for 16 years, I think it is, and it's a big dog. A lot of food, but it's all ages, so people bring their families. It's incredible. Last year, I was given a booth in the nonprofit area, which is called Ecolands. And last year, I really focused on bigger is better. So I asked for a larger booth, a large tent. I brought DJs and speakers and hula hoops, and we did a silent disco for suicide prevention and all the things. And it was funny because we had a few different hurdles where we had like too many people at our booth, or the DJ was playing while the band was on, simple things like that. So this year they asked me to come back. They asked When the Music Stops to come back to Outside Lands for the second year. And it just happened 2 weekends ago. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier that I've been working on with my therapist is getting back to basics. So what does basics look like? And for me, having been the talent buyer and the promoter in Las Vegas for 14 years, it used to be bigger is better. And, suicide prevention, we need pyro, we need, acrobats, So I was thinking about it and I was like, wait a minute, what if we just do a booth and hold space? And it made me feel uncertain. And so we did that. I told Outside Lands, just give me a 10 by 10 tent, because rather than having a big When the Music Stops circus one time,
Yeah.
and we just blow it out and that's it.
Right.
I want to have something every single year. There's another organization there called the Surfrider Foundation. Shout out to them. And they have had a small booth that's beautiful for 15 years. Wow. Think of how many people you could touch in 15 years versus the circus one time, And so it meant a lot to me. So we did the booth, and we had 18 incredible volunteers that came out at different times of each day. It was a 3-day festival, and we held space. And I was there from 9:30 in the morning to 9:30 at night, 12 hours each day, and held space with over 150 people one-on-one. And it's a very energetic thing. It takes a lot of energy, and something that I'm learning because often when somebody, because there's hugs, there's tears, there's laugh, there's joy, people, the universe sends people to us that don't know why they're there, and then they find out why they're there. I get a lot of, what's this, and then oh my God, my brother just took his life or something. That happens quite often. So we have a lot of lost survivors, and there's it gets really heavy. Not always. We keep it light. We keep it fun. We've got games and questions and all kinds of stuff. Find affirmations. There's ways to make beautiful connection. And so people, sometimes when they're talking about what they're going through, I give them a piece of my energy, a piece of my love, and hold space with them. And sometimes you take a little bit of what they're going through with you.
Yeah.
And so so on Monday, I was so drained, I could barely even, get out of bed. It was pretty tough. And I needed to go to the ocean and like put my feet in the sand and just kind of let all that stuff wash away.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing, holding space. But it was so beautiful that a friend of mine said, hey, will you do suicide prevention booth, not the circus,
Yeah.
which we've done. We've done the big tent in Nashville and Austin and San Diego and Tulum. We've done a bunch of large activations. And he said, we do the booth next weekend, which was just passed in Oakland at the Nora and Pure Festival.
Oh, that's right. I saw that.
Same thing happened. So I went there, had some volunteers. The volunteers canceled in the morning. Things happened. And I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up. I just was feeling really down. I was having a rough day, and I called my father, and he said, there's somebody there that needs you there. The one that stands out to me, because it could have been anyone, but the one that stands out to me was there was a woman. She was going through a lot. She is a single mom with 2 teenage daughters. I want to guess 13 and 15, something 12 and 15, somewhere right around there. And one of the older daughter hadn't been showering for a week and wasn't brushing her teeth and was just playing Roblox and on the phone, TikTok and Roblox. And so the mom was really struggling with finding a way to get her motivated to taking care of herself, which obviously is a sign of depression. You know what I mean? We all know that when we're not feeling good, we don't take care of ourselves. We don't make the bed. We don't, we don't brush our teeth. We might skip a day or 2 days or 3 days,
Right.
because I don't feel like that, And so the mom said to the girl, well, give me your phone. I'm going to take your phone then until you do it. She kind of gave her the ultimatum.
Yeah.
Until you take a shower and brush your teeth, no more Roblox and TikTok. And the daughter said, without batting an eye, fine, then I'll kill myself as soon as you're not looking.
What?
So that is every mother's worst nightmare. And worst, she was already worried about her daughter's mental health. And so that broke her. And so she let her have the phone and she left the house defeated. And she just left. And she went to some friends. And the friends said, hey, there's a music festival down the street. Let's go check it out. I don't know who it is. They just came. They're locals in Oakland. And she walked in, and then she's like, she sees a suicide prevention booth. And she's like, what? And she came over and she met me. And she was crying and she was talking to me. And just 2 weeks ago, she created her own small business. I won't get into details. And the small business is named after the daughters because it's her dream to make it big and give it to them. And so I was able to hold space with her. Now, am I qualified to listen to a single mother who has a suicidal daughter? Absolutely. Am I a single mother with a suicidal daughter? I'm not. So I was able to, after listening to her and holding space with her, connect her immediately with a single mother in our community, in our network, who has 3 daughters and has dealt with things like this, where the daughters are kind of trying to leverage and hold the parent hostage and things like that. And so immediately she was able to have connection and community and was able to feel heard. And now here's what's ironic. The obvious thing for me would be that was the woman that needed me that day.
Yeah.
But there was 20 or 30 other people there that day. And it might have been the one that I don't know. There might have been somebody that was really hurting, that was going through something that day. And maybe I just gave them an affirmation card. I gave them a journal or a backpack. We give away When the Music Stops merchandise.
That's so cool.
We give away When the Music Stops journals and bags. They cost us a lot, $13.78 per kit. So for every 100 I give away, costs almost $1,400, including with shipping and things like that. So that's what a lot of the donations go to, and they mean so much to people, because again, you're starting to remove that transactional. Well, I'll sell you a journal. Well, I don't want to sell journals. So I have the intention of paying for journals and having them made for you to put your thoughts and dreams in them. One of the things that I say to someone, anytime they take one of my free journals from me, one of the things I say is, you have to make me a promise. And they're like, what? It confuses them every time. And I said, you have to be honest with yourself. And it takes them, they're like, so there's a couple that are like, oh yeah, of course. But usually they're like, oh, wow. Okay. And so they're leaving with that intention of, just be honest with yourself. It's not for me, it's for you. But in my creation of these journals, my intention was for you to have an outlet. I know people that I've given When the Music Stops journals to, and they've completely filled them and then contacted us and said, hey, I live in Texas. How do I get another journal? Now, they could go buy a journal, but I have this intention that I poured into these when I made them to help others and create connection, create bond. And so those things are suicide prevention. A lot of people don't understand it. We're unconventional. I've looked at all the other organizations, bless their hearts. I'm happy they've been around for decades. There's some really good ones, Jed Foundation, AFSP is the big dogs, To Write Love on Her Arms, and Trevor Project. They do incredible stuff. But I think that there's a lane of using music as a commonality and showing up at festivals and events and being able to hold space for people that maybe are there to numb themselves or maybe are there to escape their reality. And it doesn't have to be everyone, but if we can help one person per event, then it was priceless, my being there.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That is
Thanks for
absolutely
listening.
beautiful. That is the core message of When the Music Stops. That's everything. That's everything you do. And I want you to do, you're doing light work. I want you to know that you're doing light work on this planet. And it's not easy,
It's it's beyond easy. I mean, every other day you have the universe is challenging you with, are you going to give up? Are you going to quit? Are you going to keep going? And the biggest thing that I found is that now some of the biggest opportunities and all, things that are coming in right now are because I just keep showing up and I'm consistent, and there's a lot of people that would never reach out to a suicide prevention organization that have partied with me. And so they feel safe. They're like, Josh gets it, you know what I mean? And our organization is not about sobriety. Josh's story is about sobriety personally, but we have plenty of people in our organization that drink wine or partake or whatever, they're California sober, whatever that is. But for me, my journey is something different, because separately from my mental health, I struggle with addiction. But for us, we're welcoming of all, and we have no judgment for anyone. So, I think that if there's anything that I want somebody to take away from this, it's to find a way to connect with somebody else, and listen and just see how they're doing. And you might need someone to listen to you. And in listening to others, you might forget about your problems for a second and you might get what you need.
That's beautiful. I'm going to make that a clip as well, because that's absolutely true.
I hope there's a couple clips in the middle.
There's a ton. Oh my God.
Just kidding.
No, this is absolutely true. And I want everybody to know that what you do is so, it's just mind blowing. And I had to take a second right now to truly to think about all the other organizations that are, like you said, suicide prevention, doing all that stuff. But you bring such a personal realness and personable energy to it, that this is all you. This is from the ground up, and your energy and your passion, the passion that you bring to this, you can feel it. And this is why you are able to affect positively so many people. And this is just the beginning for When the Music Stops. Like, this is
it really is. I just gotta survive the downtimes, because I'm not great at fundraising. I'm great at taking out loans. I've taken out some big loans to do some unbelievable things, and I'm not the best at fundraising. I'm the best at executing. I had and I don't want to make this about me by any means. This is not meant to be about me. It's about the work. But I had one of the former directors of fundraising from the ACLU, and they do about 200 million a year, tell me a year ago, we did a 75-minute call, and she analyzed everything that I had done in the last 2 years. And she said, this doesn't make any sense. And I said, what? And she said, you've done more work in 2 years in communities across the country than people have with 10 million in the bank. And I said, and she said, you have no money? And I said, nothing. And she said, I don't understand. And I said, well, I know how to execute. You know what I mean? I come from
Yeah.
that world of events, so I know how to get there. And the secret sauce behind When the Music Stops, the community online, the page,
Mm.
because there's our online presence and our in-person presence, and they're both super important. But they're very different.
Mm.
People that come up to me in person often have lost someone, lost survivors. People that message me online are going through something right now.
Oh, wow.
Very two different things. And I never could have expected that, except for I've been doing this now for 2.5 years. And so I've figured
Which
it
I
out.
love that you bring up, because I love when I see your Instagram stories and you ask people like, how are you today? And you ask these questions and then you post the answers with the most beautiful motivational, messages.
So the thing is with that, and that writing back with the responses is hard. That's also energy work. I didn't know this. I would do it and then I was drained. It was like 4 p.m. and I like had no energy. Like, what is going on? And like my
Yeah.
therapist is like, you're doing energy work and I'm like, on Instagram? And she's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I'm learning all this. This stuff is new.
Yeah.
Anyway, really quick. So for me, the secret sauce behind the When the Music Stops page, how it went from 0 to 50,000 followers, was because, and by the way, I had a woman recently ask me, how much did you pay? And I was like, what?
What?
I'm like,
No.
I'm trying to do suicide prevention. Why would I want spam? Like, why would I want robots in a click farm? Like, that doesn't,
Yeah.
I'm trying to help humans. Like,
No.
no, it took in the first year, I begged people, can you take your roommate's phone? Like the first 1,800 took almost a year. It was crazy. The first 1,000 took 6 months. But
Yeah.
anyway, so aside from that, what I'll do is if I'm going through something myself, I'll think, I wonder if there's somebody else. I wonder if there's somebody else right now that feels lonely. And I'll just put on my story. Anyone else feeling lonely? And it'll be like 300 people say yes in like 10 minutes. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh shit, okay. What are you feeling? And then I'll ask, and they'll be like, and then I'll be like, wow, this is really interesting. I'm not the only one. And then I'll start posting it on the story, because a lot of other pages are great at telling you what to do, not necessarily holding space.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find this unique, like, to make us feel like a community. Like, your voice matters as much as mine does. If it was just me on that page, it would be boring. I wouldn't matter. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? I wouldn't know who I'm talking to. And so for me, I love to do it. And so many people come to me, and that's their favorite part. They go, you ask us these questions and post the responses. And I'm like, yeah, we're just, trying to figure it out. And it sucks because as the page gets bigger, there'll be more and more and more and more answers. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
I see you screenshot them and then upload the screenshots, and there's like 8 answers per screenshot. And like,
it gets heavy, but I do what I can. And then I'll go. Now I've learned to try to I used to have to do it every day, and I started to have resentment towards it. And then I learned how to step away. And then what's wild was, a week ago, I didn't do it for a week. And I was going to give my page to one of our volunteers. And then I was like, I can't do that, because it won't be and I want it to be ambiguous. I want it to be anyone, black, white, trans, doesn't matter. I want the voice to be anything or anyone. It doesn't necessarily need to reflect me or my opinion. It's a container where we're holding space. So it's not the opinion of a suicidal, white male. It's the opinion of somebody who's, healing and growing and full of love and listening. So I want it to feel ambiguous. That's really important to me. So I want it to be like, if I pass it off someday to somebody else of any gender, of any race, or any sexual, whatever they're going through, that their voice is the same, of healing and love. And so I didn't do it because, I was like, it'll change the tone. And I posted that. So many people wrote me and said, thank God you didn't pass this off to someone else. I'm like, what? I was like, and they're like, don't give up on us. Don't quit. Don't. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right. And then I was like, okay, then I just need to make sure that I'm, giving myself space. But so it's really important to me to be authentic and then to make people feel heard. The wild thing is that, we could keep going. We don't have to, but the algorithms really drive me crazy,
Tell me about it.
you're leaning into videos, so hopefully your stuff is popping more. But I'll take the most beautiful message that means the world to me, and I have 51,000 followers, and it will show it to 70 people.
Yep.
And
I saw your post on that too. It frustrates the hell
and
out
I'm like, who are those? That doesn't even make sense to me. I'm like, they're literally showing it to no one, and the reason why is because they want you to pay for that to be seen. And it's
crazy.
really sad. So I took 2 not when the music stops Instagram reels. I commented who they were from. One was about potatoes. It was pretty funny, and one of them was the UFC fighter that was talking about men healing.
Yeah.
And it was just through the roof.
Yep, I saw.
38,000 one of them, 45,000 the other one.
Mhm.
And so I know it's not my page. You know what I mean? Because if you hit that algorithm, they show it to the world.
Yep.
But if you don't, and I'll post something really positive, like today's a beautiful day, everything's temporary, and it'll show it to 52 people. And then I'll post 6 kids took their lives in a suicide pact, and it'll have 4,000 likes on it.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, oh my God. But then again, earlier we were talking about focusing on the negative.
Mhm.
I can focus, and I've done this, that there's where I've sprinkled in to let people know that it happens to anyone. I'll talk about musicians or celebrities or somebody, athletes that have taken their lives, and it impacts people because it allows them to think, if it can happen to them, it can happen to me.
Yep.
That's a beautiful thing. But if you do too much of that, you're focusing on clickbait, you're focusing on the negative narrative, and the algorithm's going to feed it. They love it. But then now that's what your community is. Your community is, one of my I won't say his name, but there's a friend that I have that has millions of followers,
Mhm.
and him and I respect him dearly, but his page has become a hub for negative media. You know what I mean? And he's bringing light to it, but
Yeah.
that's his thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, this is what's horrible in the world every day, every post. And it's like, oh man, we need some of the solution.
And it hurt, and you feel it energetically when you look at those pages, and then you switch onto another page and you're like, whew, this other one's like spreading light. So I think the thing is maybe sprinkle in one of those posts.
Yeah. No, it's
like the
when it's relevant. Like one of the last ones I did was one of the last 2 that I did was on a Navy ship that's under construction. There was like a whole bunch of sailors that killed themselves in 1 year. And the Navy's just kind of like just ignoring it. You know what I mean? But it's because it's under 24-hour construction, and they can't sleep and they can't hear, and they're breathing in sawdust. Like, it's horrible. And they have nowhere to go, and they're stationed on this ship that's under construction. So they take their own lives. It's like a whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And so that one got pushed a lot. And then the young lady who was the athlete at Stanford, that had she was like, I think she won a national championship in her sport. And she was I want to say that she was the goalie for their soccer team, football team. And she was top of her class, and everyone loved her, and she took her life. And so that's really important in order for people to realize that sometimes when your life looks perfect, you could be the one that's hurting the most. You know what I mean? Because you've created this falsetto, you've created this false image of what reality is, and you've surrounded yourself by suppressing your emotions.
Which goes back to, we got to feel, we got to connect, we got to ask ourselves, how are we really feeling? Because that's what's the most important. How are we feeling? And then how can we be there for others? How can we be authentic?
When do you think is a good time to ask yourself, how am I feeling? In the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening? If you were going to do it once.
Just once?
Let's say, again, I love reverting back to basics. So imagine that you're somebody that's listening is just going to start doing this, and they want to start with once a day. When would you suggest is a good time to hold space with yourself?
As soon as you wake up. When you wake up, you're in theta waves, and then you go into alpha waves, which is you're still in like kind of a state of waking up, relaxation, coming out of that delta wave. And when you're in alpha going into beta, beta is like to executive function and doing things. When you ask yourself, how are you in alpha? And you say good, or you say something of a positive nature, your subconscious mind picks that up as truth. And so for me, practicing gratitude is super important. I mean, all day long with anything that is now routine. It's a habit. It's now what I do. But when I first started, it was like, how do I feel? And then I was very honest with myself in the morning. I began to question, okay, why do I feel this way? Right. And what can I do throughout the day to help better myself? So it's important to ask yourself the question as soon as you start the day, and then follow it up with, how can I help myself feel better throughout the day?
Wow. I haven't thought about that one.
Mm-hmm.
I usually, when I'm doing the Emily Fletcher meditation, I'm like, what am I feeling? How do I feel it? Right when I open my eyes, I lean into gratitude instantly.
Mm-hmm.
Right
Good.
before I do my prayers, I lean into gratitude. What am I grateful for? And one of the things that I love to tell people is, don't say your pets, your family, or your friends, because it forces you to think, what am I grateful for? The tree outside my house, the grass, the blue sky. What is the little thing that you're grateful for that's other than your family? The obvious answers, you know what I mean? Think different. And some days are challenging. Some days I'll be like, oh, I used everything this week. I better be grateful for something. I better be grateful for more clean towels. Like, I don't know, but like
Grateful
little
for
things.
this doorknob. This doorknob allows for me to open the door and get out of this bedroom. I'm grateful
It's a
for.
portal. But I love what you just said about how can I feel better? And I think that's a good question that I need to learn how to adapt. I've focused a lot on awareness. You know, when you first get into meditation, they say to be the observer. And in the very beginning, you're like, what does that mean? That's madness. I'm not, what am I observing? There's nothing to observe. You know what I mean? So in the very beginning of when you're going into these things, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. But as you get deeper into it, you can start to be like Neo in the Matrix with the bullets. You start to see your thoughts and your feelings. And you can say, okay, I'm not going to hold on to that one. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to hold on to that one. I'm going to let that one go. I'm going to, and so awareness is the biggest one. And my therapist loves to talk about that. She says, your awareness has really evolved, mine, in the last couple of years, because it allows me, I still will make mistakes, but I can catch them and be like, oh, hold on, wait a second. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have thought that. I shouldn't have felt that. Not in a judgmental way, but in order to be aware, and that gets deeper in the evening, where you can say the number one thing that one of the things they teach you in recovery is, who do I owe an apology to today? Where did I make a mistake today? And then there's a really deeper one where as you lay down, this is something I've been doing lately, but this is like, this is next level. This is this is like hidden knowledge stuff right here.
Ooh, let's go.
So, I'm going to get in trouble for talking about this. So right when you lay down and you're about to close your eyes, and this sounds hard, it's not. It's unbelievable how easy and powerful this is. You go back through your day with no emotion, not feeling what you felt, no emotion. You go back through your day, the entire day, in order, in reverse order, back to when you woke up.
And what does that do?
A lot.
Really?
That's a whole nother episode.
Oh, okay. We gonna end on that cliffhanger then. We're gonna end on that cliffhanger.
It's a lot. It does a lot. It reprograms your brain, your neural pathways. It allows situational awareness. It allows you to understand things, think different, improves cognitive behavior. I mean, like it's literally some like super next level hidden stuff that I'm not supposed to know, but it sounds simple, but it's like something that a wizard teaches you on a mountain. You know what I mean? Like it gets crazy.
this is amazing because I'm all about subconscious rewiring. And when you mentioned earlier on this episode about visualization and like visualizing stuff, that is huge. The greats talk about visualization and like picturing even the color of dress you're wearing of the event that you want to visualize, or the what you're wearing.
Gold dress.
Gold dress. Bang, gold dress, but visualize. But there's so many techniques that we can do to rewire our subconscious mind.
And this is we have to stop. We have to. But
I know, shoot.
But I will say this. Oh, have you read The Body Keeps the Score?
No, I keep talking about it.
Well, you need to read it.
Yeah.
So first of all, but this has came up in other things that I've studied in this year as well. But it's embedded in The Body Keeps the Score. There's a whole study and all these different things that happened in the late 70s with Vietnam veterans that were coming back, and it was in the early stages of finding PTSD. And what I could talk about this for an entire episode, but the smallest thing, and this goes into your visualization, is that, and this is not a fact for every situation, but in a lot of them, they found, especially in veterans that come back from war, that in the most severe cases, their imagination doesn't work anymore, that they can't fantasize anymore and they can't visualize anymore, and that leads to hopelessness. So at its most basic primal idea and understanding, very, very, very basic and primal, a lack of imagination equals hopelessness.
Whoa, that is so true.
Yeah. And it's been coming up for me since April. It's came up to me. Multiple people that I've studied under recently, or things that I've read, that's came up from different points of view. So it's something that I think I need to, before I really start doing public speaking about this topic, I need to really understand and conceptualize it. But that is in its root form, in the rudimental form of it, that is what it is that a lack of imagination equals hopelessness. And it's not always, and then to take it a step further, hopelessness is suffering plus bitterness.
You are absolutely right. My mind was just blown right now because I'm an incredibly imaginative person and very creative, and my mind's always like, ooh, imagining and creating new things all the time. And that's that. I feel like that hearing after what you just said contributes a lot for my zest for life.
So in 1978, the gentleman that the doctor from Harvard that wrote The Body Keeps the Score, he has a really long Dutch name. He was a Harvard doctor. He was working with Vietnam veterans, Marines. And are you familiar with the Rorschach test?
Yes.
The ink blotter. For anyone that's listening to cards, what do you see? And so I want to say they took 21 Marines that were coming back, because this is pre-PTSD. They didn't know, they didn't identify the term PTSD until 1980, but this was the precursor to that. And it's in the book. There's a whole chapter about this in the very beginning of The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about Vietnam veterans coming back from, Marines coming back from Vietnam.
Yeah.
And they would find them, going crazy on their wives and kids, and like, they'll be loving, and then all of a sudden the kid will drop a toy and they'll want to kill the family, like really severe situations.
Wow.
And they were trying to study this and figure it out. So they took 21 Marines that had returned home from Vietnam, and they were doing the Rorschach test with them.
Yeah. And
the second card, I want to say, introduced a color to it, like a color variation to the second card of the blotter, and they found that the same thing happened. Okay. The first 15 Marines, and the order is irrelevant. 15 of the Marines at the second card saw horror. They saw the worst thing that happened to them in Vietnam War. Oh my God, that's my friend's leg. Oh my God, that's the guts of, whatever, it was like 15 of them saw the most horrific thing that they had seen in the Vietnam War. The other 6 had a worse response. No response at all. They couldn't see anything. And those were the most severe cases. They said, it's just a card with ink on it. It had no imagination. It had been killed in trauma in the Vietnam War. No fantasy, no
my God.
imagination, nothing. And those were the most severe cases of PTSD. They didn't see blood and guts, they saw nothing. The imagination portion of their brain had been so traumatized, it was no longer existent, and they were now hopeless.
Is there any way to bring that back?
Got to read the book.
Damn. I would imagine from the neuroscience that I've studied that meditation would be the thing to help with that.
I mean, so I think that both of us could go down separate rabbit holes
I know, damn.
but just like researching and understanding, how to restore the imagination.
Because this is an important thing. This is important that we need to keep our imagination alive. We need
And active. And that's why play therapy is just as important as traditional therapy. A lot of people don't know what that is. I've done it. I've seen a room full of grown men playing with Legos and then crying an hour later. Like, it's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not even just talking about childhood trauma, but play therapy is so important, whether it's painting or putties or, animals, or, there's all these different levels of play therapy, and it is healing the inner child, but it's super important because it takes you back to the emotions that you felt when you did that as a child.
And I'm huge on inner child healing, huge. And you've seen my posts. I'm always talking about how I'm a big kid. We're just kids in grown up bodies. I nurture my inner child every single day. I call her little Brenda. Little Brenda punks me though when she be eating them sea salt and vinegar chips oh man. And I'm like, we can't eat that. And she's just like, I don't care. I want them, but it's true. Inner child healing is so important. I always talk about it. And when we cater to that through play therapy, when we allow ourselves to be kids, we allow our imagination to skyrocket, and then it gives us hope for the future. And we need to preserve that. We need to preserve our imagination. We need to keep it active. We need to be creative. And that is for a whole other episode for sure. Oh my God. I am
Did we break your record, longest episode?
Yes. And I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. Thank you for hearing my voice.
Of course. Likewise. This has been so amazing and healing, and it's going to empower a lot of people out there too.
Yeah, I hope so.
For sure. Hell yeah. Where can our listeners find you? What are your socials, and how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Follow us on Instagram at When the Music Stops, WhenTheMusicStops. Oh no, ICSTOPS. Yeah, When the Music Stops. I answer every message. And then also my email is josh@whenthemusicstops.org.
Perfect. And we'll have all your socials right there at the bottom. We'll have your name and everything. Josh, I can't thank you enough. I mean it. Thank you. Yeah, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for taking the time and energy out of your day. This has been an incredible episode, powerful episode. And
I can't wait to read the book about the tales of the Denny's graveyard shift.
Yo, preface by Josh, who would set up the parties around the block.
You got to go back into 18-year-old Brenda and write it from her point of view.
You know what I would do? Okay, we'll end it in 5 minutes. One of the things I loved doing with Graveyard is that the security guards and the people that helped run the wheel turn would come afterwards, and I'd always chat it up with them, and they'd be like, yo, like, whenever you want to come to a show, just like come to a show. One evening, it was super packed, but they were like, hey, this is the only time to get these tickets. We're like literally holding them for you physically, like, but we need you to get them right now. It was maybe like, I don't know how late it was. And I had a section full of tables, and I was like, fuck it. I ran out of Denny's, and I'm like, I'm coming. And everyone at Denny's was like, did she just run out of the restaurant? And
was that your last time there?
No. I
Oh
got
my God.
promoted after work.
Yeah, of course. I mean, hey, that's amazing. I love that.
Music. Hey, I wanted to go to my concert and my
Yeah.
tickets were waiting for me.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but we'll leave it with that. Josh, thanks again. And we will talk to you soon. Guys, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Again, you can follow us at Getting Mental Pod on Instagram. Also connect with me at Official Brenda Z on Instagram. And love you all. Thank you for getting mental with us. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.